Well, surprisingly, it's about men.
What?
It's about a woman whose husband, basically, she's divorcing him, or she wants to divorce him, and in retaliation, he's like, I'm gonna kill myself if you divorce me.
Well, that's uncool, bro.
Yeah. And it doesn't work out for him. So then the
Well,
next
good
thing
on you,
he does
lady.
is-
I'm glad that she stuck to our guns.
The next thing he does is punches her in the face.
No,
Like
okay, uncool.
5 minutes later. And so after he punches her in the face, she's like, no matter what you do, you'll never get me back in your life, and throws him out. And apparently, he goes the next floor up, tries to climb down into the balcony, and either lets himself go or falls on accident and dies. And that's and like the last thing she remembers is looking into his eyes as he falls to his death.
Well, I mean, he made his choice. That's not her fault. I'm sure that
So
she has to go to therapy for that,
But so that's exactly part of what the movie plays into, is it's all about the ways men blame women for their problems.
I've never done that, especially not my mother.
Because the husband literally says, like,
That was a great joke and he missed it.
I'll kill myself and that'll be on you. Like, you'll have to live with the guilt of killing me.
A lot of emotional manipulation. Yeah.
Right.
Well, another famous one is "You'll never be anything without me" or something like that.
So she, post-death, goes to a British village in the countryside to sort of get away from it all and just live. And she starts getting tormented by the entire town, who all have the same face. They all have the same guy's face.
Is this a Lovecraftian film?
No, it's just a horror film. So the first instance of it is the homeowner, the guy she's renting the home from.
Yep.
He's this sweet British gentleman. Very nice, very like, let me do things for the lady.
Milady.
Then the next person she meets is the man in the tunnel, who is the same guy, played by the same actor as the homeowner.
This is just beating John Malkovich.
But he doesn't speak. He's completely naked, and he chases her.
Wow, that's just a tunnel, man. I'm not sure what she expected.
Well, weirdly enough, that's exactly what the cops say. They're just like, oh, that's probably where he's sleeping. Like,
well, if anybody told me that story in real life, I'd be like, yeah, you saw a homeless vagrant in a tunnel. I'm not really sure. Did you expect full mental capabilities in this one?
Well, thing is, he shows up in her garden later.
Okay, now we got creepy. I don't like it anymore. Please turn it off. Turn it off.
Still fucking naked, and he tries to break into the house. So the cops
all of this is bad.
Cops show up, arrest him. The female cop is like, "I'm sorry you have to deal with that." Male cop, same face as the other guy. So she goes to the church nearby, and while there, she sees this creepy altar of a bushman. And in the back that she doesn't look at, there's a creepy altar of a bush woman holding her vagina lips open.
I'm uncomfortable.
And she has flashbacks to her husband's death, and she screams into the void.
The void or her vagina void?
The void.
Okay.
And a priest notices her.
Thank God.
And then walks outside. And then she goes outside, and she meets a little boy wearing a mask.
This never goes well.
To play hide and seek.
This is going to end terribly.
And then the priest walks up.
That's a demon child.
And the priest walks up, and the priest has the same face as all the other men.
Of course. What about the boy?
Then the little boy takes his mask off, and he has the CGI face of the same man.
Call it.
And then the little boy calls her a cunt and runs off.
Well, that was just rude.
And then she has a conversation with the priest, and the priest is like, I understand how you feel. You feel so guilty and so lost, and you have to wonder, why'd you make him do it? And she's like, fuck off. And then she leaves. And then
Did she tell him to go to hell? That would be funny.
No, she literally says, fuck off.
I can't disagree with that, but I think it'd be funny if she told him to go to hell.
The reason she says it, though, is the priest says, I'm sorry he cussed at you. And she's like, he also cusses at the priest. He cusses at the priest. Then he's like, "Why don't you fuck off, old man?" And the priest is like, "You first." And then then the little boy turns to the woman and calls her a cunt and walks away.
And then she goes, "No, you."
And the priest is like, "I'm sorry, he called you that." And she's like, "I'm used to people swearing at me, but never at vicars." And then, like, the next sequence ends with her swearing at the vicar. I'm like, yes, very nice. But then the priest smells his hand after having put it on her leg and puts his hand on the spot where her butt was. Then she goes to the pub where the local ruffians in the pub have the same face. The bartender has the same face. And Jeffrey, the homeowner, has the same face, obviously.
What?
Is sitting there, and they all talk to her, and then the cop, who also has the same face, comes in, and is like, "Oh yeah, we released the Bushman. He's just a homeless vagrant. Like, he's not harming anybody. You walk into his territory."
Not only public indecency, he tried to break into my house.
He stalked me. And the priest is, and the cop is like, "You saw him twice. Who's to say he even saw you once?" And I'm just like, wow. This movie fucking sucks, dude.
Yeah, this is not what I want to. I don't want to watch this movie.
So then she walks home in the dark, and she hears the screeches of the Bushman, and she runs back to her house. And as she's running back to her house, the Bushman steps out from behind the trees, and you can see him in all his penis-y glory.
He's upgraded the tree man.
Yeah. Oh, he actually has. You're correct, because he is growing leaves from his face.
Okay, you were saying growing, and him being naked is not a good. That was not a good mental image I had.
His image is the same image as the one on the statue in the church. It's the Bushman statue.
Okay.
Like he literally has like a leaf face. Like leaves have formed a leaf shape in his face, and by the end of the movie, the Bushman literally has that growing out of his face.
Okay.
But the Bushman does not show up at her house. Instead, the officer shows up at her house. And the officer doesn't say anything, so she walks outside. And the lights go out. And the lights come back on, and the officer's gone. And the apple tree in the yard starts shaking. And then the lights go out. And then the lights come back on. And one of the ruffians from the pub chases her inside the house. And then she slams the door. And the door's slot opens, and it's the Bushman's hand. So she runs into the kitchen, grabs a knife. Something smashes through the window. She starts screaming at it, pointing a knife at it. And she runs outside. And there's Jeffrey. And he's like, "The fuck's going on?" And she's like, "Somebody tried to break into your house, Jeffrey." And he's like, "I'm going to do the right thing and take a look around." So he takes a look around. And there's a dead bird. There's a dead bird on the table. And he's like, "Oh, pip pip cheerio. That makes sense that you got scared by a dead bird." So he does the sweep of the house. And then the lights go off. And then the lights go back on. And he's gone. And then the lights go back off. And
did the movie have problems with the lighting budget or something?
And then the Bushman is standing in Jeffrey's place. And the Bushman blows spores into her face. And she hallucinates for a second. And then she goes inside and closes the door. And the Bushman puts his hand through the door. And then she sticks the knife right through his arm.
Okay.
And you're like, all right, I'm on board. We're getting somewhere. And then he pulls his entire arm out from the knife. Which, mind you, his entire arm is
No, you didn't say that word. You didn't say those words correctly. He pulled his arm
out of the knife. Out from the knife. The knife is in his arm. He pulls his hand out from the door, and the knife does not come through the door. It comes out of his hand. He pulls his arm out from the knife.
Okay.
And now he has 2 hands on one arm, basically. 2 fingers make up one hand, and 3 fingers make up the other.
That's not how muscles and bones and tendons work.
Oh, don't worry. So then, she's like, ha 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 ha. And then she goes into the kitchen. And then the little boy is standing in the kitchen. And then the little boy with the man's face is like, "Look at my arm. It's now cut in 2. Also, we're gonna play hide and seek, bitch. You
hey,
better
little
go.
Boy, look what I did."
Yeah, well, and that's exactly it. He's like, "You hurt me." She's like, "I'm gonna hurt you again." And he's like, "I don't think you will." And then she
she stabs him again.
Nope.
Damn it.
She runs from him because she doesn't want to hurt him. She doesn't fully understand what's going on yet.
Now, that's fair, because if I saw that, I'd be like, I think I lost this one. I don't think I can beat this thing.
So she runs into another room, and then the little boy is like, you need to hide, and she starts counting to 10. And she counts to 10, and then the door beside her opens, and I think the cop rushes her?
But why?
I can't remember exactly what happens. I don't
Is
know.
he also part Bushman?
They're all the same man. They're all the same Bushman. So she runs into the bathroom, because I think she slices him in the face. She goes to the bathroom, locks the door, and then she's like, I don't think I'm safe in the bathroom. And right as her mind thinks that, the lock on the door just magically turns off, and the door opens, and the priest is there, and he walks in and starts washing his hand, the one that's cut in half. And she's like, "The fuck are you?" And he's like, "I'm allured to your vagina."
Everything. Whoa, what? Hold on, I was making a joke and I missed something.
No, literally, he literally goes on a soliloquy about how he's just a force, in the world who basically is like, the very existence of you, drives me. That's his whole thing. He's supposed to be an allegory for men who only view women as sexual organs. So he goes on this long soliloquy about how, the lady parts are a tool for war, how they drive all good men to ruin, and it's either the men or the vaginas that will one day win. This is basically all he goes on about. And then he does the worst thing, which is he clutches her panties, basically. Literally like an inch from grabbing her by the pussy. And gets on his knees, and he's like, I need an explanation. Like, what is this mouth, this slit, this gash? And then she, like, puts a knife.
It's a reproductive organ.
And then she puts the knife in, like, on against his chin, and he's like, ah, yes, a weapon. And then he tries to rip her, but she stabs him in the stomach.
Okay.
And then she runs out. And who does he... then he turns into the... And then he turns into the Bushman again, and he scares her, and he chases her. And she gets into her car, and she drives away, and she runs over Jeffrey. And she's like, oh shit, I ran over Jeffrey.
Yeah, well...
And then Jeffrey walks up to the car, and his hand is cut in half, and he's like, hello, and then pulls her out of the car, and then chases her down with the car into the fucking hedge maze.
She should have stayed in the car. I knew it. She should have stayed in there.
He crashes the car into the hedge maze, which breaks his foot. He crawls out of the car, and the lights flicker off, and the lights flicker off and back on, and he's the Bushman.
Bushman.
And the Bushman is notably fatter now, and the Bushman gives birth through his butthole to another Bushman.
I feel like we skipped a lot of details here.
No, I'm not kidding you. This just starts happening. The Bushman gives birth.
There was a whole gestation period. Usually it takes 9 months for humans. I'm not sure about Bushmen. They might be much smaller.
Wait until you hear about my explanation of the next 5 minutes. The Bushman gives birth to the Bushman, who still has a severed arm and a broken leg. So the Bushman crawls towards her, and she's like, oh, things are getting weird. I'm gonna walk towards the house.
Oh, things are getting weird now?
She walks towards the house, and the Bushman follows her into the house, where he gives birth to the cop. And the cop starts crying, and she's just looking at it, and he gives birth out of his back to Jeffrey.
What is going on? What Roman and Greek mythology bullshit is happening right now?
She walks into the kitchen, where Jeffrey stands into the doorway, and then gives birth out of his mouth to, I think, the little boy?
But these people are already born.
The little boy is the first to be born. So she walks into the sort of sunroom of the house as Jeffrey follows her. As Jeffrey follows her. And he vomits up another body. And it's her husband. And they sit on a couch together. And she's
have a nice tea.
No, and I mean, he has all the same wounds that he had when he died. That's the whole reason, like, the hand gets cut in half and the leg gets broken, is because those are the same wounds that were on him when he died.
Okay.
And so they sit on the couch, And she's like, "What are you?" And he's like, "I'm your husband." And she's like,
"Nah, bitch, I divorced you.
What is it you want from me?" And she has an axe in her hand. And he's just like, "I want your love." And she just looks down at the axe and gives like a soft smirk, and then like this facial expression of like, "This is just the world." And then she says, "Yep."
Then you got it.
And then title card. Like, that's it. That's where it ends. And I'm like, what? There's got to be more. And then we get like a semi-post-credit sequence of her sitting outside the house the next morning when her gal pal shows up to help her.
I like the first half of this. The second half went off the rails.
Yeah, the second half gets crazy. Second half is a visual like feast, but woo boy.
I have many questions. I have no answers.
I mean, it's my assumption is that it's supposed to reference the perpetuity of men, making men that are just as bad as the previous generation in just different ways.
I mean, it could be. It could also be just the trauma that she views every man as that now.
I mean,
would be more my understanding of that.
It is definitely the implication of trauma, but it's the implication of this is a hyperbole of how women exist in the world, where every man they interact with, shares the same face in the ways they treat women, in the little misogynies. That's why every man has the same face, because it's the face of a misogynist. It's not these men's faces, because she doesn't even pick up on it. She doesn't pick up that they have the same face. At no point does she recognize that.
Okay.
It is purely supposed to be for our benefit to understand this is the world as the woman sees it. And I'm like, that's very interesting, where she even like contemplates going back to help Jeffrey, because up until this point Jeffrey has done nothing like
but to help her.
Done nothing to harm her. Like, all he's done is helped her. And then the minute she goes back to stop and help him, he flips the script, starts calling her Mrs. instead of Miss, and drags her across the ground. Also my favorite line is the priest coming into the room and says, "In my mind, you're a master of carnal knowledge. You've explored everything that you can do and have done to you. In my mind, I have decided this." And I'm like, wow, that's probably the realest thing. Like, that's the biggest thing that men definitely do, is just not men, but
But this is just the obviously not all men are like that, which is one of the things. I would have liked it much better if Jeffrey was that nice dude that, horror movie wise dies for being the nice dude and actually tries to help her instead of being another piece of shit. But it's that quintessential men just view women as
a sex thing.
Yeah, like not even just, I wouldn't say sex dolls, it's just like absolute whores for some reason.
And that's the thing that I think I like about Jeffrey, is Jeffrey, when he does the turn, he doesn't say anything about her being a whore, about her being a slut. He literally just calls her Miss, and then angrily calls her Mrs. And that's enough to give away everything that is supposed to be Jeffrey's form of misogyny. Is, even though she hints at getting divorced earlier to him,
even though she's taken,
right? She's like, he's not. He's like, you're not anything without the misses. If you're a miss, no, you're not. You're a missus. Like, that's a thing you should want. Whereas, the priest is celibacy's gross effect. And then the cop just completely downplaying all of her concerns. Which is my favorite, where he's just like, yeah, you sold him twice, yeah. Who's to say he saw you once? He's not all there, is he? And I'm just like, that's not grounds?
Nope. I mean, there's been plenty of stories of women being stalked and police being like, well, he hasn't committed any crime. It's not a crime to stalk somebody. He's like, yeah, but he clearly has evil intentions. Could we do something?
You could go down to the courthouse and get Restraining order.
Restraining order, yeah. Good luck with that.
That'll come into effect in 4 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. And then she gets murdered or kidnapped, and Love is like, what happened? How could we have done this differently?
Yeah, it bothers me.
This movie's bonkers, man.
Yeah, Men's pretty interesting.